There is a boy. His name no longer matters, not because it was never important, but because what he becomes matters more than where he began. He is young, perhaps 7, perhaps 8, or maybe war has made him older than any number can express. He was born in a village with no remaining maps, not because the village was remote, but because the fire that swallowed it did not leave anything for cartographers to remember. The boy's parents died when soldiers passed through one of many armies, none of whom stayed long enough to justify a flag. He survived not because of luck, but because no one noticed he was still breathing under the ash. You see him now sitting on the edge of a broken well, his hands wrapped around a small cloth pouch containing all that remains of his family, a smooth stone that once belonged to his mother, and a bent hairpin from his sister's braid. He has not spoken in days, maybe weeks. The last time he tried, no one listened, and so he has chosen silence, but not the silence of despair. No, this is the silence of someone learning how to listen to things. Others overlook the crunch of dry leaves beneath bare feet, the sigh of wind moving through bones of ruined houses, the way the stars don't care if the earth burns. His skin is dusty, his ribs visible beneath his thin tunic. Yet his eyes, when they open, do not reflect hopelessness. They reflect a strange kind of softness, not because he has been sheltered, but because he has seen so much that his heart refused to harden. It is too easy to become stone. He wants to remain soil, something that can still receive rain. Each morning he wakes before the sun, not from habit, but from the rhythm of birds who still remember to sing. He watches them with something like reverence, the way they flutter from ruin to ruin, still building nests as if the world has not fallen apart. Sometimes he mimics their whistles, quietly, not to call them, but to remind himself that he is not completely alone. One day, while scavenging for food, he sees something that stops him, a figure barely visible in the distance, moving slowly through the burnt trees. The figure is cloaked, hunched, and walking with the help of a crooked staff. He watches from the shadow of a crumbled wall as the figure bends to gather herbs growing from between the stones, life in the cracks, as if the earth itself had not given up. Curiosity is stronger than hunger. The boy follows. They walk through the remains of many lives, abandoned carts, tattered flags, a rusted kettle resting upright, as though it still waits for water and a fire that will never come. But the figure the stranger cloaked in humility does not seem afraid nor hurried. Each step feels deliberate, like he walks not to escape the past, but to bow gently before it. Eventually, they reach what remains of a temple, its walls half standing, its roof sagging like tired shoulders. Yet within its courtyard, weeds have not overtaken the stone. A broom leans against the doorway, as though someone still cares enough to sweep. The boy stands at the threshold. The figure turns. An old man, eyes creased like folded parchment. He looks at the boy without surprise, without words, only the kind of gaze that neither demands nor rejects, only accepts. The silence between them is not empty. It is full of invitation. The man gestures toward a small mat by the door still intact. The boy sits, his legs folded beneath him, his hands in his lap. For the first time in many nights, he does not think about food. He simply breathes, slow, deep, And the air tastes different here, softer, like old prayer mixed with steam from forgotten tea. This is how healing begins, not with declarations or ceremonies, but with one person choosing not to close. You sit now beside the boy. You too have lived through something. Maybe not a war, but a kind of heartbreak, a loss of trust, a grief that left you quieter than before. And maybe, like him, you are still learning that softness is not what breaks you, but what keeps you whole. Breathe now. Feel the gentleness in your own lungs, like wings remembering how to open. The morning comes slowly in this broken temple, not with trumpets of light, but with the hush of mist winding through pine. You sit in the courtyard with the boy. He does not speak. The old man, the monk, does not speak either. Yet something between them is already forming. Not a friendship, not yet, but a rhythm, a quiet rhythm that asks nothing and gives everything. The monk moves as if each motion matters. He does not shuffle, he does not rush. When he lifts the broom leaning by the doorway, he does so as though lifting something sacred. He begins to sweep the worn stones of the courtyard, not out of duty, but out of reverence. The boy watches. The boy wonders. There is no chant, no scripture, no lecture, only sweeping, forward, back. The dust rises, dances, then settles. The breeze carries a few dry leaves into the corners. The monk retrieves them with a soft patience, as if grateful even for their return. You notice the boy's posture begin to shift his shoulders, relaxing his knees, lowering toward the ground. He watches the old monk, not like a child stares at an elder, but like a flower orients itself to the sun. Eventually, the monk finishes and rests the broom against the door again. He walks past the boy and places a kettle over a small fire. There is no wall left to shield it from the wind, but the fire does not mind. It flickers quietly steady in its dance. The boy draws nearer. The monk places two bowls beside the fire, one chipped, the other still whole. He pours tea from a battered tin pot, the leaves spinning like tiny stories before settling at the bottom. No one says thank you. No one needs to. They sip in silence, but the silence is not empty. It is full of warmth, of recognition, of breath shared. As the steam curls upward, the boy sees something reflected in the tea's surface, not just his own face, but something softer behind his eyes, something he hasn't seen in many weeks. Hope not as a banner or a shout, but as a tender willingness to begin again. After tea, the monk rises and walks into the forest behind the temple. The boy follows without invitation. He knows somehow that he is allowed, that he belongs. The path is narrow, overgrown in places, but it is clear the monk has walked it many times. His feet know the way, not just through the forest, but through the act of moving forward without forcing the pace. The boy mirrors each step carefully. Soon they reach a clearing. In its center, a pond perfectly round mirrors the sky above. A few lotus leaves float near the edges. One dragonfly skims the surface, pausing just long enough for the boy to notice its wings shimmering like threads of light. The monk kneels by the pond. He picks up a single fallen leaf from the ground and places it gently on the water. It floats, spinning slowly, going nowhere, becoming part of the sky's reflection. The boy kneels beside him. The monk finally speaks, not with voice, but with finger. He writes one simple line in the sand beside the water. Soft things last longer. Then he smooths the words away as if to say, the truth doesn't need to be held, just seen. You breathe in that teaching now. Let it rest somewhere behind your heart. Soft things last longer, not because they overpower, but because they endure, because they do not resist what is. The monk picks up a twig and begins to draw something else this time, not words, but circles, one inside the other, a ripple pattern like what happens when a single drop lands in the still pond. He looks at the boy, then touches his own chest. The meaning is clear. What disturbs the surface is not always what disturbs the depth. The boy nods. He doesn't understand fully, but something inside him recognizes the truth. You sit with them now by the water. You've had ripples too, words that landed hard, memories that shook your reflection, moments that scattered your peace. But beneath it all, the depth of your pond is still clear, still whole, still capable of reflection. You place a hand over your own heart. The rhythm there is soft, resilient. Let the image of that lotus pond remain with you. Let the steam of tea and the silence of sweeping linger in your breath. The world may ask you to be loud, to be hard, but tonight you are learning to be still, to be soft, to last. By the time the boy awakens the next morning, the monk is already outside, seated beneath the pine tree that leans slightly toward the east. The morning air is cooler here, sharp, but refreshing like a river over smooth stone. Birds call softly in the trees, not to announce themselves, but to welcome light as an old friend. The boy steps out barefoot, the cold stone beneath his feet, anchoring him to this new rhythm, one without orders, one without fear, just breath and footsteps, and the gentle pull of curiosity. He approaches the monk, who sits cross-legged, eyes open but still. The monk reaches to his side and holds up a simple object, a bow strung tight, carved from bamboo. The boy tilts his head. He has seen weapons. He knows the tension of string pulled taut. He knows that when enough force builds, something must be released. But the monk does not shoot an arrow. He doesn't even pull the string. Instead, he sets the bow down beside him and picks up a second one. This one older, cracked along the grip, the string frayed and sagging. He plucks it lightly. The sound is dull, hollow. Then he places both in the boy's hands and gestures with a palm toward the forest path. The boy carries them carefully, walking behind the monk as they return once more into the woods, though this time on a different trail. It's narrower, edged with thorns and moss, and the slope grows steeper with each step. The boy's legs begin to ache, but he doesn't stop. He follows the sound of robes brushing bark of the monk's breath, steady as the wind through trees. Finally, they arrive at a small plateau overlooking the valley. The horizon is washed with the pale gold of morning. The wind picks up slightly, whistling through the bamboo groves below. The monk gestures for the boy to sit and hold up the first bow. The boy holds it upright. The string hums slightly in the breeze. Then the monk holds up a hand. He points to the bow and speaks at last. Too tight, snap. Too loose, no sound. The boy blinks. The monk continues, voice gentle, each word falling like rain on thirsty soil. Mind is same. Pulled too hard, it breaks. Let go too much, it drifts. The boy frowns, eyes narrowing not in disagreement, but in the weight of trying to understand. The monk gently takes the bow from his hands and sets it aside. Then he closes his eyes. "Wind never fights tree," he whispers. "It bends it." The boy sits quietly beside him, the two of them watching the wind pass through the branches below. Bamboo sways, not rigid, not collapsed, just bending. The monk takes a long breath, then opens his eyes and turns to the boy. He picks up a small twig and begins to draw a figure in the dust again. A person standing straight, arms stiff. Then another arms wide body bowed, knees bent. He points at the stiff figure, breaks, then at the bowing figure, flows. The boy nods. You watch this moment through your own breath, and you realize you too have pulled yourself too tight sometimes. You've told yourself to be strong, to push harder, to endure more, but perhaps no one ever told you that tension is not strength. Perhaps no one reminded you that even the string of a bow needs balance to make music. You sit now in the boy's place, holding both bows. You look back on your own days, the ones where you were stretched thin, pulled in too many directions expecting perfection. How often did that tension serve you? And then those moments you allowed rest, those mornings when you let go of expectation, the moments you breathed without effort. Can you feel the difference? You look again at the trees. They do not resist the wind. They let it pass through, not because they are weak, but because they know resistance breaks. Surrender bends and lives. The monk places his hand gently on the boy's shoulder. The boy leans into the touch, not clinging, not afraid, just resting. And for a moment, the wind stills. A hush falls over the valley like a soft blanket. And within that hush, something inside you loosens. Something clenched for too long. Some hidden vow to always hold it together. You feel it now beginning to dissolve. Not all at once, but gently, like a bow unstrung, like breath let go, like kindness returned to the self. The days pass quietly, like clouds over a distant peak, shifting but never hurried. You and the boy grow used to the slow rhythm of temple life, sweeping boiling water, foraging roots from the woods, and sitting still beneath the pine tree while the wind tells its old stories. The monk does not speak much, but his silence carries meaning. And when he does speak, each word lands like a drop in a still bowl, soft but undeniable. Then one afternoon, everything changes. It begins with a sound that doesn't belong here, not the rustle of wind or the call of birds, but boots. Heavy, unfamiliar, indifferent to stone or silence. They echo up the path like a warning. The boy stiffens. You feel his breath catch. The monk rises slowly from his seat beneath the tree, his expression unchanged. He walks to the temple gate, opens it without fear, and bows slightly, not from submission, but from presence. A man stands there, clad in tattered armor, a blade at his side, rusting but sharp. His eyes are wild, his breath uneven. A deserter, perhaps, or a remnant of the armies that swept through long ago. Whatever he once was now, he is only hunger wrapped in anger. He sees the monk's calm as insult. He growls, stepping forward. Food, shelter, now. The monk says nothing. He simply steps aside, allowing the man to enter. The boy watches fists clenched, his body tight, his heart pounding. This is not right. This place is sacred. This man is rage and ruin. The intruder storms into the temple, pushing aside the offering bowls, tearing through the few belongings in search of something to steal. His sword clinks against the stone. It sounds like thunder in a place that has known only rain. The monk walks slowly into the kitchen. He gathers a few roots, a half-filled jar of rice, and places them on the floor before the man. The man scoffs. "You think this will fill me?" he snarls. Still the monk says nothing. The man raises his sword. The boy moves without thinking. He rushes forward, arms outstretched, not to fight, not even to protect, but to stop the madness. The grief in him rises years of silence, of buried screams, of watching everything fall apart, and now this moment boiling over. But the monk gently raises a hand, a single gesture, calm, still. He steps forward and picks up a simple bowl from the ground, ceramic smooth, filled with water for tea. He holds it out. Then without a word, he turns it and pours the water onto the stone floor. The sound is soft, barely more than a whisper, but it echoes. The man stares, confused. The monk speaks. "Strike water," he says, "and you cut nothing." Then he kneels and gathers the scattered roots with slow, deliberate care. The man's blade trembles. His anger, so used to being met with fear, suddenly has no direction, no fuel, no enemy. Only a man pouring tea. Only a boy watching with wide, astonished eyes. Only silence that will not resist. Eventually, the man lowers his sword. He takes the food. He does not thank them, but he leaves, slowly, like someone walking through a dream they don't understand. And when his footsteps fade down the path, the monk turns to the boy. He pours another bowl of water and places it gently before him. "Be like this," he says. The boy looks at the bowl. His breath slows. His shoulders lower. He begins to understand. You sit with him now before the bowl. You remember your own life. Moments when anger visited. When someone stormed into your peace with sharp words, with accusation, with pain dressed as power. You may have fought back, or you may have frozen. But what if you had been like the water, not passive, not weak, just uncuttable, just whole even in disturbance? The monk sits beside you. He does not explain. He does not lecture. He simply exists, like the bowl, like the water, like the silence between storms. You place your hand over your chest. Feel your heart there, still beating, still soft, still whole. Let it be a bowl tonight. Let whatever sharpness was thrown your way today flow over, not into you. Let your silence be strong. Let your softness endure. Let it all pass through. Years pass, not in the way calendars measure, but in the way trees grow and winds shift. The temple becomes whole again, not because it is rebuilt, but because it is filled with presence, with rhythm, with stillness. The boy, once a silent orphan, has become a young man. His frame has grown taller, but his gaze remains low, humble. He moves as the monk once moved slowly without resistance, like tea poured with care. The old master no longer tends the fire. His steps have grown light like mist over the stones. One day he does not wake, not with alarm, not with suffering, only with a long exhaled breath that becomes sky. The young man does not cry, not because he does not love, but because he has learned that grief too can be held like water in a bowl, not clutched, not denied, but honored with stillness. Seasons change, trees bloom and shed. And now, in the quiet hush of twilight, a soft knock comes at the temple gate. You rise and walk to open it. A child stands there, barefoot, thin, eyes heavy with something you recognize too well, a weight beyond their years. You see yourself in them. You see the past arriving again, but this time not as pain as opportunity. You bow gently and invite the child in. You pour water into a bowl. You sweep the same stones. You say little, but your silence speaks of safety. Later, as the child rests near the pond, you sit beside them and pick up a fallen pine needle. You draw circles in the dust ripples like your master once drew. The child watches. You whisper, "Soft things last longer." They look up at you, unsure of the meaning. But something in their breath settles, something in their shoulders releases. A tension you remember so well. You watch the sky reflected in the pond clouds passing slowly. No need to hold them, no need to change them, just witness, just rest. You place your hand over your own heart again, still soft, still here, still able to receive. And for a moment, as the breeze moves through the bamboos, once more, you feel the truth settle in your bones, not as a belief, but as something lived. To be soft in a harsh world is not to be broken. It is to be unbreakable in a way the world has forgotten. Soft like water, soft like pine needles, soft like a teacher's silence. You close your eyes now, feeling the night gather around you. No sharpness, no fight, just the hush that comes when nothing more needs to be done. Let the past pass through you. Let your story, like the boys, begin again each time you choose not to harden. You are not weak for needing rest. You are not behind for not pushing. You are not failing because you feel. You are still here, still soft, still able to love in a world that taught you to brace. And that is a kind of courage nothing can touch. And now, as you drift toward the quiet shore of sleep, bring with you the teachings of this gentle night. Feel your body softening your jaw, your shoulders, your hands. There is nothing left to hold right now, nothing to carry. The world will wait for you. Let your breath become slower, deeper, quieter, like wind through leaves, like tea cooling beside an old stone wall, like a memory that no longer hurts. You are the bowl still whole, even after the fire. You are the tree that bent and never broke. You are the water reflecting moonlight, long after the ripple fades. Let the soft courage of that boy, of the monk, of the child at the gate, become your courage now. You have always been this. You have only forgotten in the noise. But tonight you remember. Let the hush of this story stay with you. Let it rock you. Let it hold you gently, gently, like a teacher placing a hand on your shoulder without saying a word. You are safe now. You are soft. And you are strong. Rest, dear soul. Let the silence and teach you the rest. Let sleep take you like wind across still water. Let go. You're already home. And as the silence of the mountain temple fades gently into the folds of your memory, like mist dissolving from the morning pines, you feel the wind shift. It moves not with force, but with invitation. It brushes against your skin like a whisper beckoning you eastward, toward saltier air and homes that lean with age and grace. And now the softness you've carried begins to take new form, not as stillness, but as movement. You follow the wind across valleys and shorelines until bamboo begins to rise around you. In a village shaped by storms and patience, the lesson continues. Here the people do not fight the wind, they learn to bend. Come, let us sit a while longer this time beneath the trembling stalks and listen for what doesn't break. Here on a crooked coastline, where the wind rarely sleeps, a small village clings to the earth like a whispered prayer. Its houses do not stand tall, they kneel slightly forward, bent from generations of leaning into storms. Their roofs are not nailed but tied with ropes, anchored with stones bowed not in defeat but in reverent flexibility. You walk quietly into this village, now your feet touching earth, salted by centuries of wind. The smell of brine, wet wood, and sun-warmed rope fills the air. The clouds hang low, not threatening, but ever present. As if the sky, too, leans in close to listen. This is not a place that fights nature. This is a place that listens to it. Children chase wind-tossed leaves across muddy paths. Laundry flaps like flags of surrender, not of war. And above it all, the bamboo tall elegant, always moving sways in graceful rhythm, not resisting the gusts, not pushing back, just bowing and rising again. An old man sits at the edge of the village beneath a worn awning patched with sailcloth. He whittles in silence, his hands wrapped gently around a strip of green bamboo, not cutting it into shape, only guiding it. His bench creaks, not from age but from softness, woodworked with humility, not force. This is Jiro. He's been here longer than most can remember. Some say he came from the sea itself, washed ashore with a satchel full of shavings and silence. Others say he simply appeared the day after the last great storm, already sitting beneath this roof, already shaping bamboo into something gentle. He is not revered like a master. He does not speak like a teacher. But those who sit near him leave quieter than they came. You join him now. You do not introduce yourself. You do not ask questions. You simply sit and listen to the creak of his bench, to the rasp of the knife on cane, to the breath of the wind through stalks that know how to move. He hands you a thin strip of bamboo. It's curved, almost serpentine, but when you press on it, it holds. When you bend it gently, it does not splinter. It sings slightly a low hum of strength that yields without breaking. Jiro nods. Then he points toward a nearby structure, a small tea house built entirely from bamboo walls, beams even the cups. It's not impressive. In fact, it looks like it should fall over. But it hasn't. Not through a dozen typhoons, not through 100 monsoons. Why? Because it listens to the wind. It leans, it gives, it breathes. Not once has it resisted, and not once has it fallen. You sit with that thought, now holding your own strip of bamboo. How many times in your life have you tried to stand firm, to brace yourself against the storm? How often did you think that being strong meant being unmoving? But what if strength lives in movement? What if courage lives in yielding? Jiro picks up another stalk thinner than the first and bends it into a loop. He hands it to a passing child who laughs and spins it in the air like a wheel. The wind catches it and it rolls away. Jiro smiles. You see it clearly now. This village survives, not because it resists, but because it bows. It does not try to tame the wind. It dances with it. You breathe in that lesson, deep, gentle. Let it settle into your spine, into your shoulders, into the spaces that have held too tightly for too long. Let your breath bend like bamboo. Let your thoughts soften like rope in salt air. Let your heart remember that what gives survives. The sky begins to darken, not with threat, but with calm. A sea fog rolls in. Lamps flicker inside the homes, and the sound of waves becomes softer, like distant lullabies. You stay seated beside Jiro, watching the last birds return to their nests, their wings folding in peace. You too are learning to fold now, not in collapse, but in quiet surrender, because the wind is not your enemy. It is your teacher, and you are ready to listen. The sun rises not with flare in this coastal village, but with a slow reveal like the lifting of a veil. Pale light pours across the rooftops, catching on raindrops left from a night's drizzle. You step outside the boards beneath your feet, slightly damp the air cool with salt and something more ancient patience. Jiro is already awake. Of course he is. You find him exactly where he was the day before, on the same bench beneath the patched awning, a fresh stalk of bamboo resting across his lap. It is long green and freshly cut, so still holding the dew of morning. His blade glides along it, not to shape it into something rigid, but to reveal the curve already hidden inside. You sit beside him. He does not speak, but your presence is welcomed with a slight nod, a barely perceptible shift in the corner of his mouth, a smile not from habit, but from stillness. Jiro holds the stalk up to the sky and shows you something strange. The bamboo bends slightly on its own, not from pressure, but from the way it grew responding to wind, to shade, to where the sun fell. He hands you a smaller piece, smooth and light. You try to bend it. At first, your fingers tighten. You try to control the curve. But Jiro places his hand over yours softly, loosening your grip. You try again, not forcing, just following. And this time, the bamboo moves not like something conquered, but like something dancing. Most people carve life, he murmurs, but it was already shaped. You just have to notice. You let the words settle. Then he gestures toward his bench. You hadn't paid attention to it before. It is nothing fancy, just a long seat of interwoven bamboo slats. But when you sit again, you feel it, a quiet resilience. There are no nails, no glue, only tension, curve, and trust. It creaks gently beneath your weight, not in protest, but in welcome. Jiro smiles again. He taps one of the support joints beneath the bench. Each piece bends slightly, he explains, so no one piece breaks. His finger lingers, like people, like families, like minds. You look up at the swaying stalks. They do not stand alone. They grow in groves, each supporting the others, leaning, sheltering, allowing. No one bamboo tries to block the wind entirely. They simply adapt together. You wonder how often you've stood alone. You remember moments when you braced your spine, clenched your jaw, tightened your heart. Times when you believed strength meant silence or resistance. When you refused to yield and something inside you cracked. And here is this man, small, old, soft-spoken, crafting entire homes, benches, tools, all from things that yield, things that listen, things that do not need to be strong in the way we've been taught. You close your eyes now. Feel your own breath. Notice where it is rigid and where it moves. Are you the knife or the hand that listens? Are you cutting through life or uncovering what's already waiting to be known? Jiro leans back, his tools resting on his knees. The wind picks up again, stirring the grove. The sound of leaves brushing one another is soft, musical, like whispers exchanged between old friends, and you realize this village has not avoided storms. It has welcomed them. because everything here, every roof, every bench, every bamboo stalk is built not to resist the wind, but to know it. You rise with Jiro and walk the narrow path toward the tea house he once pointed to. Inside, everything breathes. Nothing is rigid. The walls curve slightly, the beams flex overhead. Even the floor hums underfoot, as though remembering every footstep that ever passed through. You sit. A warm cup of tea is placed in your hands, not too hot, not too full, just enough. Steam rises slowly. You inhale. It smells of earth, of sun, and of patience. And as you sip, the warmth moves through your chest like a gentle tide, reminding you, you too can live like this. You too can learn to bend. You too can listen. Let go of the need to brace. Let go of the demand to be unmoving. Let yourself become like the bench beneath you, quiet, curved, enduring. Because sometimes, what supports the most weight is what gives the most space. The sea has moods of its own, and tonight it is restless. You feel it first, not in the sky, but in the way the wind begins to curl through the bamboo groves, no longer playful, but pulsing like breath drawn in before a cry. The villagers move quietly, tying shutters, rolling up nets, stacking stones against doors. No one panics, no one shouts. This is not fear. This is a ritual, a dance with the wind they've long known. You stand beside Jiro as he fastens the last length of rope across the eaves of the small tea house. His movements are neither rushed nor lazy, only practiced, as if helping the wind find its path rather than fight it. He looks up at the clouds. She's coming, he murmurs, not with dread but reverence. And then, as the sun sinks into the sea, without ceremony, the storm arrives. At first, it is a whisper, then a drumbeat, then a howl. Rain lashes sideways, not from above, but from every angle like 1,000 soft fists. The bamboo groves bend almost to the earth, but never snap. The ropes groan on rooftops. Lanterns flicker and go out, and then a single sound splits the night. A deep, guttural crack, wood against wind, pride against nature. You run to the hilltop heart, pounding through the softness you've tried to learn. Atop the slope, the old bell tower, long the symbol of the village, has splintered. Its great beams, once upright and proud, lie broken in the mud. The bell itself rests crooked, silent. People gather, blinking rain from their eyes. Jiro arrives last. He does not mourn the tower. He only walks to it, kneels, and touches the cracked timber with fingers as soft as prayer. You stand beside him, unsure what to say. It had stood for generations, built from thick hardwood, nailed and braced, a monument to permanence. And yet, Jiro speaks softly. Too proud to bow, he says. So it fell. You close your eyes, rain soaking your skin, wind tugging at your sleeves. In that moment, something shifts, not outside, but within. You think of your own towers, the identities you tried to hold, the beliefs you swore must never change, the expectations nailed together inside your chest, strong, unmoving, rigid. And you feel them creak now, not collapse, not shatter, just loosen. Jiro walks back toward the tea house, and you follow through the storm. Inside, the walls move faintly in the wind. The roof hums, but does not break. You sit in silence. No one speaks of the tower again. In the days that follow, its wood is reclaimed, its bell placed in the garden, not as a warning, but as a reminder. A small plaque is added. The wind taught it mercy. And now, when visitors ask about it, the villagers smile gently, not in shame, not in sadness, but in knowing, because something doesn't have to last forever to teach you something eternal. You sit again beside Jiro, sipping tea, the sky clear once more. He hands you a stalk of bamboo, this one curved more than usual, marked by scars from the storm, but still alive, still rooted. You trace its shape, you feel its story, and in its soft bend, you begin to recognize your own. You too can change shape. You too can let go of height and find depth. You too can fall not in failure, but in reverence. Soften your breath now. Unclench what you were holding. What tower in you is ready to bow? And what wind might you let in, not to destroy you, but to show you who you really are after the storm, the days return to quiet. The sky becomes glass again. Bamboo bends and bows in familiar rhythm. But within that stillness, something else begins to stir. A young man appears in the village, not a boy and not yet wise. He arrives with shoulders square to pack, filled with sharp tools and a heart forged by ambition. His name is Riku. He has come from the inland provinces, where temples rise high and roofs are carved with dragons. He is a woodworker by trade, and he speaks with the crispness of someone used to being listened to. He watches Jiro work first from a distance, then beside him. At first, Jiro does not speak. He allows the young man to sit to carve, to make mistakes with the silence of a stream that doesn't rush to correct a fallen leaf. Riku frowns often. He cannot understand why Jiro lets the bamboo curve so much. He tries to straighten every piece. He binds them tightly. He pushes them into angles they do not want to hold. You lose structure this way, he mutters one day. Jiro smiles gently. No, he says. You lose listening, but Riku is not ready to hear that. He begins to build a structure of his own just behind the village path on a platform of hard oak. It is angular, sharp-edged, beautiful in its symmetry, nails driven deep, beams that don't bend. It stands tall in contrast to the low-slung tea house nearby. The villagers watch politely but from afar. You observe too curious. Then one evening, a sudden wind returns not a storm, but a warning. A breath of nature reminding the village of her presence. Riku's structure shudders. Its beams, stiff and proud, begin to creak. He rushes to reinforce it. He braces the joints. He tightens the knots. He believes he can hold it all together. But in the morning, a corner of the frame has split. Not from failure, from refusing to move. Riku stares at the crack in disbelief. It wasn't supposed to happen. He had calculated the angles, measured every length. Jiro walks over, kneels beside the damage, and gently touches the broken edge. You held too tightly, he says. So it tore? Riku lowers his eyes. For a long time, he says nothing. Then quietly he asks, how do I build something that lasts? Jiro places a stalk of bamboo in his hands. Let it teach you. And for the first time, Riku listens. He begins again this time, not alone. He joins Jiro on the bench day after day, learning how to work with the grain instead of against it. He lets the bamboo speak. He learns where it wants to bend, where it needs space. He learns that strength does not come from resisting the wind, but from moving with it. You watch this shift in him. You see his shoulders lower, his jaw soften. He begins to laugh more, to pause more. He speaks less. But when he does, There is a kind of silence inside his voice, the kind that listens first. You think of your own striving, the times you tried to hold it all together, the moments you feared collapse, and so you hardened. But what if collapse is not the enemy? What if the breaking is the beginning? You close your eyes now and imagine the bamboo in your hands. You let it curve. You breathe with it. You do not fix it. You do not change it. You simply hold it soft scarred and alive. And in that gesture, something in you learns to forgive yourself for all the ways you tried to be unbreakable. Because sometimes the greatest strength is the one that bends and rises again. Years pass quietly in this village, by the sea measured not by calendars, but by the way bamboo thickens and curves with time. Riku remains no longer the rigid apprentice of old. His hands now shape with reverence, not control. His brow no longer furrows with the need to prove, but smooths with the humility of someone who has learned how to listen. Jiro has grown thinner, his steps slower, his silences deeper. And one morning, beneath the awning that has long shielded him from both sun and storm, he does not rise. The villagers gather. They do not weep aloud. They do not call attention to the ending. They simply sweep the path brew tea and let the wind carry his name in whispers. His bench remains. So does the groove his body wore into the seat. So do the tools still oiled and clean. But the greatest thing he left behind is not wood or memory. It is the rhythm, the way the bamboo moves, the way the roofs bend and never crack, the way the villagers tilt their heads slightly in wind but do not shrink. You return years later, walking again on the familiar salt-washed stones. Children now chase wheels made of bamboo rings. A young woman teaches them how to weave. You see the tea house that's still standing curved even more than before, and beside it a new bell tower, this time not of hardwood and pride, but of hollow reeds and soft rope. When the wind blows, it doesn't resist. It hums, it sings. Riku finds you near the garden and places something in your hand, a carved loop of bamboo, smooth and spiraled. You trace its arc and feel it pulse gently, as though remembering every storm that shaped it. It's not perfect, he says. No, you reply. It's alive. He nods. That night, you sleep beneath the open eaves. The wind brushes through your dreams, not tearing, not shaking, but reminding you that you don't have to hold it all together, that you don't have to stay upright at all costs, that what bows does not break. You breathe with the rhythm of the bamboo. You let it move through your ribs, through your hands, through the spaces you once feared were too soft. You are not a wall. You are not a tower. You are not something built to stand still in all seasons. You are something that listens, that leans, that grows through movement. You are bamboo in the wind. And now, as the night deepens and the sea hushes into sleep, let the lesson rest with you. Let your breath follow the curve of everything that endures, not through defiance, but through flow. Let your body soften. Let your spine gently sway. Let your spirit yield not from weakness, but from wisdom. Because when the wind comes again, and it will, you will remember, you don't have to fight. You only have to bend, and you will rise again. And now, dear one, as you close your eyes, and the rhythm of this village hums quietly in your chest, allow yourself to drift. The wind no longer frightens you. It moves through you, not around you. Let your body be like bamboo, light, hollow, and unafraid of movement. Let the stories of storms pass through your thoughts like clouds through a vast open sky. You do not need to resist the memories. You do not need to brace against the unknown. You only need to breathe, to bow, to rest. Feel your muscles loosening your jaw, unclenching your fingers, unfurling your shoulders, sinking into the earth's embrace. You have nothing to prove. You have nowhere to be. You are here, alive, gentle, still standing. Soft strength flows through you now, like tea through a thin cup, like wind through bamboo, like love through silence. May you rise tomorrow with a body that remembers to listen. May you move through your day with a mind that remembers to yield. May you return to sleep each night with a heart that no longer fears breaking, because you know now what bends is what survives. Good night, dear soul. Let the wind carry you now. Let go. Let go. The morning light in the monastery is always soft, never rushing, never loud. It seeps gently through rice paper doors, stroking the floorboards like fingertips made of cloud. You stir awake in your small room, just as the bell chimes once low and hollow somewhere near the lotus pond. Today, like every day, you have a task. It's a simple one. Carry 2 water pots down the hill to the stream, fill them, and return before breakfast. And yet, there's always a part of you that dreads this walk. You step outside and find the pots waiting by the stone step. One is smooth, symmetrical, unblemished. It gleams in the early light, like it knows its purpose and fulfills it perfectly. The other, your assigned pot, is chipped along the rim, slightly warped at the base. A fine crack runs from the lip to the belly, not large enough to be useless, but just wide enough that water always leaks as you walk. You lift both, carefully sliding the wooden beam across your shoulders, the pots hanging from either end, and then you begin the walk. The path winds slowly down the hillside between bamboo groves and mossy rocks. Birds begin to murmur in the trees, and the stream ahead burbles like it's always glad to see you. You kneel, scoop water, fill both pots. Full, heavy, balanced. For a moment there's peace, but as you begin the uphill climb back toward the temple, the familiar rhythm returns. Drip, drip, drip. Each step is marked by the soft tapping of your pot leaking onto the dirt path. You don't have to look. You know what's happening. It happens every day. And every day, by the time you return to the top, one pot remains full and the other is half empty. And so are you. Some mornings you try to walk faster. Some days you tilt the pot a little, hoping it might lose less. But no matter what you try, it always leaks. By the time you arrive and pour the water into the temple cistern, you feel a weight not from the pots, but from your own sense of failure. The perfect pot delivers fully. Yours does not. And though no one ever says a word, you can't help but imagine that others must notice. You begin to apologize in silence to the earth for wasting water, to the monks for not fulfilling your duty properly, even to the pot itself for being broken in your hands. No one scolds you. No one even looks your way. And perhaps that hurts more, because you begin to believe that your failure is so expected, so regular, it no longer needs attention. The next morning it happens again. The same walk, the same leak, the same silent shame that pools beneath your ribs like the lost water soaking into the path. And yet, you never refuse the task, you never complain, you simply carry and leak and repeat. It becomes not just a chore, but a quiet sorrow. You wonder if they give you the cracked pot on purpose, if it's a lesson, if it's punishment, or perhaps if it's all you're worthy of. The mornings begin to feel longer. The water is heavier, and though no one says a word, it feels like the silence itself has grown louder. One evening, as the lanterns flicker to life in the eaves, the old monk who assigned you the task appears beside you as you clean the pots. He places a hand on the chipped one, the crack cool beneath his fingers. He does not speak. He only smiles and says softly, "Tell me, have you ever looked at the path?" You blink. The path. He nods. "Tomorrow morning, look carefully not at your feet, but at the way behind you, and then come find me." Then he walks away, robes whispering like reeds in the wind. You stare down at the pot. It stares back, silent, flawed, and faithful. You wonder what he means. And so before you sleep, you make a quiet promise. Tomorrow, you will look. The next morning, you rise early before the bell, before the birds, before the steam of rice has begun to scent the temple air. The pots wait for you, just as they always do. You lift them with practiced care, balancing the beam across your shoulders, feeling the familiar tug, the symmetry of weight, and the asymmetry of spirit. But today you remember, look carefully, the old monk said, not at your feet, but at the way behind you. So you begin your walk not as a duty, but as a meditation, down the winding path past the split rock that looks like a smile past the tree where the sparrows always argue. You arrive at the stream and kneel, filling each pot until they sigh full and cold in your hands. And then the return. The uphill climb begins, and with it the dripping. Drip, drip, drip. You try not to tense, not to grip tighter, not to let your mind fall into its usual rhythm of self-judgment. Instead, at the first curve in the path you stop, you turn, and for the first time you see it. A line of green, bright, impossibly bright. Tiny flowers with petals like prayer flags dancing in the morning breeze. Only on one side of the path. Only on the side where the cracked pot hangs. You blink, unsure if it's real. You take another 10 steps. More flowers. Some small and blue, like shy eyes. Others tall and golden, stretching as if to greet the sun. All of them growing exactly where your pot has leaked. Your breath catches. You stop again. The drip continues, and now it no longer sounds like loss. It sounds like rhythm, like watering, like offering. You remember every step you took with shame, every glance behind thinking only of failure. But here now is proof of something else, life. You crouch to touch a flower. It leans into your fingers, soft and damp with dew, and maybe with your own tears. The path is no longer just a route to the stream. It is a garden, and you have been tending it without knowing. By the time you reach the top, your shoulders feel lighter, not because the water has lessened, but because the burden of what it means has changed. The old monk is waiting for you. He says nothing at first. He only points back down the hill. Well, he asks softly. You nod, unable to find words. He walks with you then, not toward the temple, but back down the path. He stoops every few steps to touch the blooms, murmuring their names: safflower, amaranth, wild basil, sleeping skyroot. You ask almost shyly, did you plant these? He smiles. No, he says. You did. You stand in silence, the morning wind brushing your sleeve. But I never meant to, you whisper. He looks at you. Not everything kind must be intentional. Not everything beautiful must be deliberate. Some of the greatest compassion leaks quietly through our cracks. He places a hand on your shoulder. I gave you the cracked pot on purpose, he says, not to test your strength, but to teach you softness. You look again at the flowers. They nod gently in the breeze, as if to say yes. You watered us. Every single day, a wave of warmth moves through your chest. You breathe deeper than you have in weeks. And for the first time in many mornings, you feel enough. The next day, you carry the same pots, walk the same path, and feel the same wind, but now you see it differently. You no longer dread the dripping. Instead, you listen to it. Drip, drip. It's not a flaw. It's a blessing in rhythm, a soft percussion to the unseen song of growth. You begin to notice how the sun touches the flowers just as your water reaches them. You see bees float low drunk with early nectar. Tiny frogs perch in puddles you once called waste. Even the soil seems to welcome your walk. You realize this path has become a kind of temple, and you, a kind of quiet gardener, all without trying. That evening, the old monk joins you again, this time in the garden, beyond the temple wall. He holds a cracked teacup in his hand, sips slowly. Do you know he says the word garden shares a root with guard? You tilt your head. To guard something, he explains, means not to fence it in, but to tend to it. With presence, with patience. That's what you've been doing. He gestures toward your chest, not in blame, but in recognition. Even while blaming yourself, your heart still watered beauty. You sit together in the golden hush of twilight. The sound of water pouring into basins echoes in the distance, and from the nearby tree, a bird begins a slow, spiraling call. The monk begins to tell you a story. When I was a younger monk, he says, I too carried a cracked pot. But mine was not made of clay. It was made of memory. I carried guilt for years for a friend I failed for words I didn't say. And because I couldn't forgive myself, I believed I had no right to help others. You glance at him surprised. He smiles thinly. But the very things I hid softened me. I began to listen better. I wept more easily. I became someone who didn't rush people through their pain. He lifts the cracked teacup. This cup leaks too, but it still holds enough to offer. He pours you tea. It trickles slightly at the crack, but what remains is warm, fragrant jasmine and cinnamon steam rising like incense. You sip, and it is enough. You think of all the times you judged yourself by how much you lost, how much you failed to hold. But now, in this garden of unintentional blossoms, in this moment of shared tea and memory, you begin to understand what leaks from you is not always loss. Sometimes it is nourishment. Sometimes it is kindness you didn't even know you gave. Sometimes it is what others needed more than perfection. You lean back, resting your palms on the soft earth. A petal falls from the sky, or perhaps from the memory of the wind. You close your eyes and feel the warmth of your chest, your breath, your hands. You are not full. You are not perfect. You are still leaking, and you are still giving. And this is more than enough. Days melt gently into one another, like tea into warm water. The cracked pot still hangs from your shoulder each morning, but it no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a companion, faithful, open, true. You've stopped trying to walk quickly. You no longer tilt it to save the water. Instead, you walk slowly now with deliberate grace. You feel the rhythm of each droplet as it leaves not lost, but gifted. Each step has become a small act of compassion. One morning, while refilling the pot at the stream, you notice a younger novice watching you. His name is Toma, wide-eyed, barely 13 robes, too long for his arms. He asks, "Why do you use that pot if it's broken?" You smile, and for the first time, you tell the story, not just the facts, but the feeling. The flowers, the silence, the monk with the teacup. You watch his brow furrow, then soften. He asks, "Am I a cracked pot too?" You pause. Then you say, "Aren't we all?" Later that evening, the old monk joins you again under the lantern light. He has brought with him a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, a series of cracked clay pots, some split cleanly down the middle, some only chipped at the rim. Each one filled gently with soil, each cradling tiny sprouting plants. "These were the ones we almost threw away," he says, "until we realized they still had room for life." He looks at you. Cracks let in the light. They also let love out. He places one in your hands. It is beautiful, not despite its cracks, but because of them. Gold leaf has been brushed along the break lines, like veins of fire through earth. A soft sprout grows within green, curious, leaning toward the moon. You run your thumb along the golden seam. "It's called kintsugi," he says, "a Japanese practice mending what's broken with gold, not to hide the damage, but to honor it." You hold the pot gently as if it were a story, and maybe it is. A story of how the wound became the opening. A story of how pain became prayer. A story of how the heart, once split, learned how to hold more love than it ever could before. You begin to see your own heart this way, mended not with denial, but with attention, not covered over, but illuminated. You remember the moments you thought would break you, the words unsaid, the nights heavy with silence, the failures you tried to bury, and yet, here you are, not unscarred, not untouched, but tender, capable of carrying more, not despite the cracks, but because of them. You look up at the sky, cloudless but vast. Even the sky, you realize, is not whole. It is full of spaces, full of letting go. You exhale, and in that breath is everything you once tried to fix, now floating gently away, like incense in evening air. You are not here to be seamless. You are here to be sincere, to carry what you can, to drip beauty where you walk, to let the brokenness become compassion. And as you return to your room, the cracked pot resting near the door, you place your palm over your chest. There is a rhythm there, a leaking, loving rhythm, and it is more than enough. The pot still leaks, but now every droplet it leaves behind is a bow, a gesture of giving, of knowing, of peace. You carry it each morning with no shame, no rush, no apology. You do not need to fix it, because you've stopped trying to fix yourself. Instead, you carry yourself like the pot, gently, humbly knowing that your presence is already enough. You smile more now. You notice things. The way the morning sun filters through the bamboo, the dew beads on the petals you helped nourish, the laughter of Toma as he tries to balance his own pots, spilling more than he carries. And you teach him not how to avoid leaking, but how to walk kindly with it, how to trust the rhythm of giving. One day, as the season begins to turn, you are asked to join the old monk in front of the Sangha. He is stepping down from his duties. He chooses you to carry on the morning water path, not because you are the most perfect, but because you have learned how to carry imperfectly. You bow, and when you rise, you feel no weight in your chest, only the memory of cracked clay and the blooming it left behind. That night, as the temple lanterns flicker and the garden hums in quiet sleep, you sit once more beside your pot. You light a small candle and place it inside. The light glows through the crack, casting soft, broken lines on the wall. You realize something profound. If the pot had been perfect, the light could not shine through, and you think about your life. All the ways you tried to hold everything in, all the tears you were afraid to let fall, all the strength you thought meant never breaking. But now you understand. To carry water with grace is to allow some of it to spill. To love with grace is to be willing to let it flow through you, even when it cannot stay. To live with grace is to stop asking how full you are and start asking what has bloomed along your path. You close your eyes. You see again the winding road lined with flowers that do not judge. They only open because something nourished them, and that something was you, a cracked vessel, a flawed carrier, a quiet gardener, a giver, even when you didn't know you were giving. Let this be the lesson you carry into your dreams tonight. You don't have to be whole to give wholly. You don't have to be full to be enough. You don't have to be perfect to be sacred. You only need to walk the path and trust what grows behind you. And now, dear listener, as your breath settles and the world softens around you, allow this story to cradle you into sleep. Let the dripping pot rest in your heart, not as something broken, but as something brave. You've walked many paths. You've carried many burdens. You've spilled more than you ever admitted. And still look what has grown in your wake. Look at the garden. Look at the petals. Look at the peace. You are not the perfect vessel. You are the perfect offering. Feel your muscles relax now. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw release. Let your breath fall into the rhythm of the earth. You do not need to hold everything tonight. You do not need to be seamless. Let the cracks widen gently, just enough for moonlight. Let the breath leak out like incense. And as you drift deeper, deeper into the hush of rest, remember this. Every step you took watered something sacred. Every tear you thought was wasted made room for compassion. You are not empty. You are not broken. You are simply open. Let go now. Let sleep carry what you no longer need to hold. Let dreams bloom where your footsteps once fell. And remember, the pot may leak, but the heart still gives. And that is enough. And now, dear one, as the moonlight fades across the cracked pot's golden seams, you feel the last echoes of water settling into still soil. The path behind you glows faintly lined with flowers you never meant to grow, yet somehow did. You have learned to carry without shame. You have learned that even what leaks may nourish. But tonight the lesson continues. The wind shifts again, not in direction, but in tone. Softer now, more uncertain, like the hush before a question long held. You walk once more, this time not toward blooming, but toward a place where two friends no longer speak, where misunderstanding hangs like mist between hearts that once knew each other well. Come now, let us walk this new path together. a path where truth is hidden, forgiveness is hard, and yet peace still waits patiently, like a cup of tea cooling between two silent hands. The morning mist gathers low on the ground, curling gently around your ankles as you step from the guest hall of the remote temple. The hills beyond the stone gate are veiled in white hush, and the call of a single morning dove cuts briefly through the fog, then disappears like a breath held and released. And you've been staying here for a few days now, sent from your home monastery to help with seasonal chores in this quiet temple nestled between two ridges. It is a place that sleeps beneath pine shadows, where nothing is rushed and everything, even silence, is sacred. But even here, especially here, you notice a tension that does not belong to the land. It rests between two monks who live under the same roof. They are both kind to you, gentle. One is soft-spoken and leans slightly as he walks, robes brushing the floor like low clouds. The other is tall and quiet, his eyes like still ponds. They greet you every morning. They offer you food. They bless your sleep. But they do not speak to each other, not with words, not with eyes. Their silence is not the same kind that comforts it, crackles faint and dry like leaves too long without rain. In the mornings, they bow in the same meditation hall, but always with two cushions between them. During meals, they sit at the same table, but one serves himself only after the other has left. And when you first arrived, you thought it might be coincidence. Now it feels like choreography, a dance of avoidance rehearsed with years of sadness. The abbot, a woman with laugh lines deep as roots, tells you one evening beneath a lantern's glow they were once closer than brothers. But something happened years ago. Neither has spoken of it since. You ask gently, "Did they argue?" She shakes her head. No, that's the strange thing. They never raised their voices. One day they simply stopped, and that silence, more than any word, became the stone between them. She sighs, but perhaps silence too can soften. That night, you sleep lightly, not with unrest, but with a curious stillness, like standing before a door you've never tried to open. And in your dream, you see two mountains, one red with fire, one white with snow. Between them, a narrow bridge made of threads, frayed, but still holding. When you wake, the dream remains, like steam rising from a teacup, fading but fragrant. You begin the day again the same as before, fetching water, sweeping leaves, listening to birdsong. But now, as you move between tasks, you carry more than buckets or brooms. You carry a question. What keeps friends from speaking? And what allows silence to heal rather than harm? You walk the path down to the stream with the older monk, he of the silent gaze and calm hands. His presence is quiet, like moss on stone. The buckets sway from his shoulders as you trail just behind him, the morning sun stretching long golden lines between your footsteps. He does not speak, but he walks beside you without hurry, without coldness. When you slip on a damp stone, he reaches out, steadying you with a firm, brief grip. Then he releases. That afternoon, you carry firewood alongside the other monk, the one with the soft voice and sloping shoulders. He hums to himself as he walks. Sometimes a few words slip out, like petals shaken loose by a breeze. He asks about your journey, your temple, your favorite tea. You answer lightly, but when you ask about his brother monk, his smile fades slightly. Ah, he says, we walk different paths now. He doesn't explain, and you don't push, but the silence after his words feels heavy, as though the firewood shifted its weight into your chest. That night, you sit outside the meditation hall. The moon has risen, veiled in silver cloud. You hear the wind passing through cedar trees, low and uncertain. You wonder, can silence become a prison? And if so, what key could open it? You think again of the two monks. You've watched how they share a space without sharing warmth. You've seen them reach for the same ladle only to withdraw. How they pause in narrow hallways as if unsure who should pass first, then both step aside, never meeting eyes. It is not anger. It is not hatred. It is something sadder. It is the ache of what was once whole, and still it is tender in its own way. Each man moves carefully, almost respectfully, around the other's silence, as if they still hold love, but do not know where to place it. You think of how many times we carry words too long, a misunderstanding left unspoken, an apology never offered not out of pride, but out of fear that it might not be enough, a wound too tender to name. Perhaps they both grieve the same thing, just from different banks of the same river. The next morning, you prepare the tea fire in the small garden hut. As the kettle sings softly, the abbot steps beside you, her hands wrapped around a bowl of ginger root. They do not need fixing, she says, without being asked. But sometimes, seeing our pain in someone else's eyes makes it easier to let go. She hands you a sprig of mint. You can be that mirror. You smile faintly. I'm just passing through. And so is the wind, she says, yet it still shakes the leaves. You think about this as you steep the leaves. You think about the weight of unspoken words, and how even silence can grow heavy when held too long in the same hands. That evening, after the chanting bell, you leave 2 cups of tea in the hallway, one by each of their doors. You say nothing, but in the steam rising and curling into the twilight air, you hope they'll hear something. Not a word, but an opening. It is early, just before dawn. The temple is still sleeping when the abbot invites you to walk with her. You follow her beyond the garden walls, past the stone bell tower, and through the dew-laced trees. The path leads you higher, where the mist thickens and pine needles hush your steps. She walks slowly, her hands behind her back, as if carrying memory more than weight. You've noticed the silence between them, she says softly. It's hard not to. Silence can be beautiful, but also sharp. You nod, not needing to reply. She stops beside a ridge where a small river winds through mossy stones. The sound is clear here, water brushing rock like a soft cloth, polishing old truth. She points to a smooth boulder in the middle of the river, worn and weathered but still unmoved. You see that stone, she asks. It's been there for generations. Once the villagers tried to dislodge it, thinking it blocked the flow. They used ropes and logs, even fire once. But it didn't move. You squint at it, half submerged. And the river, you ask. She smiles. The river learned to go around. She crouches, picks up a pebble, and lets it fall into the stream. It skips, once then sinks without a sound. I tell you this because forgiveness doesn't always mean changing someone's mind, she continues. It doesn't always mean hearing the truth we long for. Sometimes it just means letting our heart move differently around the pain. The wind rustles the pine branches. The river flows on undisturbed. She rises slowly. One of them may feel like the stone, she says, unmoving, hardened. The other, the river might think he must break through or give up. But the truth is, water doesn't need to win, it only needs to flow. You both walk back in silence, not the tense kind, but the still, full kind, the kind that wraps around the bones like warm cloth. That evening, you sit alone with a cup of tea, the abbot's story curling around your thoughts like steam. You think of the two monks. One may be waiting for a word that will never come. The other may be afraid to offer one that would reopen old wounds. And so they stand like river and rock together, yet apart. You wonder, what if the bridge is not built by words, but by presence? What if the water is already flowing, just quietly? That night, you dream of the river again. But this time, you are the bridge, not to fix or connect, but simply to witness both banks, to hold space across still water. And as the dream fades, you awaken with a soft idea forming behind your ribs. Perhaps the river doesn't need to change the stone. Perhaps it only needs to bless it and keep flowing. Morning arrives like silk pulled across stone, gentle but undeniable. You wake with a thought, still lingering from sleep. Not every bridge needs words. And so, after the meditation bell, you walk into the garden hut again, where the kettle already hums with warmth. You steep jasmine and ginger together, one for calm, the other for clarity. As the cups fill, your breath slows. This is not a solution. This is simply a gesture. You set 2 cups onto a lacquered tray, the wood worn with years of ritual. Between them, you place a small slip of rice paper. You do not write a paragraph. You do not explain. You take your finger, dip it in tea, and trace only a few simple words onto the surface. You are both hurting. It dries quickly, almost invisible. But the message lingers, not as ink, but as presence. You place the tray in the corridor where they both pass, not at a door, not in one room over the other, just at the crossroads where paths quietly meet. Then you return to your seat in the meditation hall. Nothing happens immediately. There is no dramatic gasp, no sudden reconciliation. But as the morning light spills through the lattice, you hear the soft echo of 2 sets of footsteps, not at the same time, but closer together than usual. You do not turn. You do not need to. Later that evening, the tea tray is gone. So are the cups. Only the paper remains damp, curled faint with the smell of jasmine. The words have vanished into the fibers, but something tells you they were read, not just with eyes, but with the part of the heart that still remembers softness. The next morning, something changes. You arrive early to sweep the courtyard. As you bend to gather fallen petals, you hear the door slide open. One monk enters, then the other. They both sit for zazen, as they have always done, no closer than before, no words exchanged. But this time, one reaches out to light the incense for the other, a silent offering, a small flame passed between stillness. You close your eyes and breathe in the cedar smoke. It curls and dances like forgiveness, rising unspoken but unmistakable. Not everything has healed. Not everything needs to. But something has shifted, and like the message written in steam, it cannot be seen for long, but it can be felt. The next day begins without ceremony. No sudden sunrise, no startling change, just the soft hush of feet across the temple floor and the rustle of robes in rhythm with breath. You are sweeping the courtyard again, a quiet task that has become your daily meditation. The wind carries the scent of tea leaves, and something else ease. You glance toward the meditation hall. The two monks are walking side by side, not close enough to touch, but not avoiding each other anymore. They do not speak, they do not bow, but they move together like two threads in the same weave, no longer resisting the pattern. That evening, as shadows stretch across the temple eaves, you sit with the abbot in the garden. The lantern light flickers gently, warming the corners of her smile. You didn't repair them, she says, but you reminded them of the bridge. You tilt your head. Did they forgive each other? She smiles deeper. They remembered that they were never truly separate. She pours you tea. No cracks in the cup this time, but steam rises all the same, curling like soft breath, vanishing into night. And you think about forgiveness, not as a moment, but as a direction, a way of facing towards someone, even if no words are spoken, a willingness to sit beside what once hurt, without flinching. You remember how silence used to stretch between them like a frozen river. Now it flows, not quickly, not loudly, but with peace. You rise early the next morning, gathering your things to return home. Before you leave, you place a small folded paper on the windowsill between their rooms. It read simply, "The river did not move the rock. It just kept flowing, and the garden grew anyway." You step out into the dawn, where the path winds downward between pine shadows and pools of golden mist. You do not look back. You do not need to. The bridge has already been crossed. And now, dear friend, as the temple fades into memory and the moon rises high above your resting breath, let this story soften your edges. Let go of the weight you carry, the words unsaid, the hurts unname the hearts you once loved but no longer understand. Let go of needing resolution. Let go of needing to be right. Let go of needing to be whole before reaching out. There is peace in not knowing. There is peace in not fixing. There is peace in sitting quietly with what once hurt and choosing to keep breathing anyway. Tonight, you are the river. You are not here to push the stone. You are here to flow around it with grace. You are here to nourish the banks. You are here to make space for blooming. Feel your body soften now, your shoulders, your neck, your face. Let the quiet rise inside you like evening mist. Let sleep come not as a reward, but as a welcome friend. And if your dreams take you to a place of silence, may you find it full, not empty. May you walk quietly beside those you once held close. No need for words, no need for answers, just presence, just peace, just this breath, and the next, and the next. Sleep now, kind one, and let forgiveness flow. The stars are still visible, scattered across the navy sky like flecks of silver leaf on indigo silk. The temple behind you has grown quiet, its lanterns now dimmed its hallways at rest. The warmth of forgiveness lingers in the air, like steam after tea, gentle and fragrant. You walk away slowly, not from what was, but towards something unknown. The ground shifts beneath your steps, from smooth temple stone to the crunch of old pine needles. The silence deepens here, but in a different way. It is no longer the silence between two souls. It is the vast sky-wide hush that wraps around a question. Grief, yes, but also longing. She has come seeking the wind, not because it is strong, not because it is fast, but because once long ago, before her mother left this world, her mother had said, "The wind carries more than sound, it carries answers." but you must listen without asking. That is the only way it speaks. Now months have passed. The funeral chants faded. The offerings long cleared away. But the ache remains soft like a bruise that refuses to leave. And so she walks toward the high mountains where the wind is older, thinner, wiser. She walks with a single question in her heart, unspoken but heavy. Why didn't you stay? The trail curls upward. The trees grow sparse. The silence thickens. Even the birds seem to watch her without song. She stops to rest beside a mossy stone. Her breath comes in little clouds, rising and vanishing, like the thoughts she can't say aloud. She tries to remember her mother's voice, not the exact words, but the tone, the softness, the rhythm of bedtime stories, the smell of warm rice, the way a hand brushed her hair aside. But even memory, she learns, begins to fade when held too tightly. She looks up. The wind passes again, cool and uncertain. She closes her eyes, listening, but it says nothing. Still, she listens harder. She holds her breath, but all she hears is the sound of her own longing. And still she keeps walking, not because she believes the wind will answer today, but because she hopes it might one day, and that hope, small as it is, becomes a path. One footstep at a time, she walks until her legs tremble, up winding trails over stones, slick with moss, through thickets that snag at her sleeves like small hands begging her to turn back. But she doesn't. She carries her question like a lantern, dim but steady. At each turn in the path, she whispers her mother's name, sometimes aloud, sometimes only in thought. The syllables fall like petals, but the wind does not catch them. At a small clearing, or she finds an ancient tree. Its trunk is wide enough to shelter a storm. She presses her palm to the bark and leans close. "Are you hiding my answer?" she asks the tree. It creaks softly in the breeze. She takes that as a maybe. Farther up, she kneels beside a cold stream. The water runs fast and clear, catching sunlight in brief silver flashes. She cups it, drinks, then leans close and whispers. Do you carry her voice? The stream answers only with its own rushing song, nothing human in its reply. She climbs again, and now her body grows weary. Her feet ache, her shoulders sag beneath the invisible weight of all the things she's never said, not just to her mother, but to herself. That night, she rests beneath a low outcrop of rock. The stars are far now, like distant islands across an ocean of sky. She lights a small bundle of dried herbs, just as her mother taught her. The smoke rises slow and white. She closes her eyes and prays, not for a miracle, just for a sound, a whisper, a sign, but again nothing, only wind brushing the edge of stone like fingers afraid to hold. The silence begins to ache, not just in her ears, but in her chest, where grief curls into itself like a bird too cold to sing. She tries again the next day. She kneels before an ancient shrine covered in moss, half buried in time. There are no monks here, no statues, only the faint shape of what once was sacred. Still she bows and speaks into the air. Why didn't you answer? Why did you leave me with so much silence? She opens her eyes. The wind stirs, but not in reply. It passes overhead, thin and high, untouched by her longing. She stands slowly. The silence begins to feel heavy now, like a wall, like a refusal. She kicks at a pebble, and watches it tumble into the grass. "I came all this way," she says aloud, "and you still won't speak." For a moment, her hands curl into fists, but then she sees a small bird hop between branches, not singing, just being. And for a moment, she feels a flicker of shame, not for being angry, but for demanding sound when the world is still speaking in other ways. She realizes maybe she hasn't been listening deeply enough. Maybe she's been listening only for what she wants to hear. Still, her heart is tired. She sinks to the earth and lets her breath slow. Her palms rest open in her lap. The sun dips low. Shadows stretch across the path, and the wind continues to move, still without words, but no longer empty, just waiting. The third morning arrives without clarity. She wakes with dew on her sleeves, cheeks damp with sleep, or dreams she can't be sure. The mountain fog has thickened, curling through the trees in long white ribbons, softening everything. She walks again slower now, not searching, just moving. Then, just as the trail seems to vanish into mist, she sees it, a small wooden hermitage, nestled into the cliffside, half swallowed by vines and cloud. A stone path winds gently toward it, lined with bowls of dried flowers, offerings untouched by time. She hesitates, then climbs. No sign marks the door, no bell chimes, but before she can knock it opens, and there, standing in silence, is an old woman with robes the color of ash and hair like silver thread undone by time. Her gaze is calm, as if she has been waiting, but she does not ask who the girl is. She simply nods and steps aside. No words, just welcome. Inside, the air is warm, with the scent of pine and tea leaves. A kettle simmers on the coals. A simple altar glows with butter lamps. There are no books, no scrolls, only emptiness arranged with care. The girl stands uncertain. The woman pours tea, hands her a cup. Still, no words, just presence. Days pass. They do not speak, not because they cannot, but because something else is happening beneath the silence. The girl sweeps the courtyard. The woman tends the moss garden. In the mornings, they sit together facing the mist, breathing with the trees. And slowly the girl's breath begins to match the wind, not demanding, not grasping, just passing like clouds across a quiet sky. She still carries her question, but it feels lighter now. She begins to notice things she hadn't before, the way the mist moves like fingers between bamboo stalks, the sound of a single drop of water falling into a stone bowl, the warmth of the cup in her hands before each sip. One evening, she finally asks, "Why don't you speak?" The old woman smiles faintly but does not answer. Instead, she places a pebble in the girl's palm. Then she gently folds the girl's fingers over it and walks away. That night, the girl sits alone on the porch. She opens her hand, looks at the pebble. It is small, ordinary, and yet, in her chest, something loosens. The wind stirs, and for the first time, the silence no longer hurts. It listens back. She begins to rise before the sun. The old woman doesn't wake her, never has. But something inside the girl now stirs her from sleep, just as the sky turns the color of stone, warmed by breath. She steps barefoot into the courtyard each morning. The air is cold, but not unkind. Mist clings to her skin like a blessing. She sweeps the fallen pine needles with quiet care, each motion like a bow. The broom's bristles whisper across the stone. Nothing spectacular happens, and that is the lesson. Each day is a soft repetition, tea, stillness, silence, breath. There are no sermons, no proverbs, no chants to memorize, only moments. One morning, as steam curls from her teacup, the girl watches the mist rise from the garden and merge with the sky. There's no clear line between earth and air. Everything belongs to everything else. A single crow calls from a branch and then disappears into the fog. And suddenly it occurs to her, maybe the silence wasn't empty after all. Maybe it was full, just not with what she expected. She places her cup down, closes her eyes, and breathes, not to chase an answer, not to call her mother back, but to be still enough that her own heart might finally be heard. She begins to remember small things not with pain, but with gentleness. The hum her mother sang while folding laundry, the touch of a cool hand on her fevered forehead, the sound of her mother not saying anything at all, but being there in the room, presence without explanation, just like now. Just like this, the girl walks through the garden that evening and sees her reflection in a bowl of water left for birds. She leans closer. For the first time, she does not look for her mother's face in her own. She sees herself, cool, quiet, here. Later that night, the old woman joins her on the porch. The stars are clearer now, the wind quieter. Still no words, but the girl reaches out and places her head gently on the woman's shoulder. Just once, a thank you without a voice, a question answered without a sentence, and the wind moves again, not to reply, but to accompany. It is time to go. She doesn't know how she knows, but one morning she wakes and feels it like the hush before a temple bell, like the final note of a lullaby that lingers even after the sound has faded. The old woman stands by the garden gate, holding a small cloth bundle of food. Still no words, just a nod, a gesture of farewell without separation. The girl bows deeply, her hands pressed together, forehead to fingertips, not as a guest saying goodbye, but as someone who has received more than can be named. She takes her first step down the mountain path. The mist rises behind her, the hermitage vanishing like a dream, but the stillness within her stays, no longer seeking, just walking. She pauses beside the river she once asked for answers. This time, she does not demand. She listens not with ears, but with her whole body. And in that moment, the wind shifts, not louder, not clearer, just different. It brushes past her cheek like a mother's palm. It stirs the hem of her robe like laughter remembered. It rustles the trees like a lullaby hummed too quietly to catch, but too familiar to miss. The wind has not changed. She has. She walks now not as a seeker, but as one who understands silence was never the absence of love. It was the space love gave her to grow. The sky opens above her, and in it she feels not loneliness, but belonging. She does not look back. There is no need. Her mother is not behind her, not gone, not distant, but within each step she takes, within the tea steam that rises, the quiet that listens, the wind that does not answer, because it no longer needs to. And now, as your body begins to soften into rest, let the silence of this mountain linger around you, not as an echo, not as a void, but as a cradle, holding you gently between each breath. You may have questions, you may still carry ache, but tonight let them rest. Let them sit beside you, unjudged, unhurried. Not all prayers are answered in words. Sometimes they return as peace, sometimes as warmth in the chest for no reason at all, sometimes simply as sleep deep and tender. Feel your breath now slow and easy, like mist drifting between cedar trees. Let your thoughts float as clouds across a quiet sky, neither chased nor held. Let your body melt into stillness. Let your heart loosen like robes folded neatly by a sleeping mat. You are not alone in this silence. You are held by it, cradled in wind, softened by time. And as the stars blink open above the unseen peaks, let yourself fall into that wide, wordless sky. No answers needed, just this breath, and the next, and the next. Sleep now, kind listener. The wind is still with you, and so is the silence that heals.